A guy who loves to talk fantasy baseball.
3-2.
This is Full Count Fantasy Baseball.
In a year that has been so improbable, the impossible has happened.
Here is your improbable host, Dean Millard.
Presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports. Get in the game where you own the game.
And good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. Good evening, maybe really depending on where you are tuning into this show from. My name is Dean Millard, and I am proud to be the host of Full Count Fantasy Baseball. This show will be transitioning to Inside UFLB in October, just in time for the playoffs, because in the UFLB, we will go all the way to the end of the World Series. All right, this show presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports. I'm going to tell you all about this wonderful platform that we have going and how you can get involved throughout the show, and also how you can get involved in Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network. That's where you're watching this program on UFSN, and we'll give you all the details on how you can get involved in that if indeed you have a show, a fantasy program that you might want to get on the program. But let's dive into it. What a week it's been for baseball. Hall of Fame ceremonies yesterday. Some great stories told. I just love when players talk about their families, particularly their parents. So I really enjoyed yesterday, and some teams are heating up and some other teams are falling apart. So let's start things off with the early game question of the day.
This is a serious message. Peace and love. Peace and love.
So when we look at the early schedule today, you've got the Dodgers and the Cardinals. And then the next game after that, which will be about 1:30 my time in the Mountain Time Zone, you'll have the White Sox and the A's. Now, all four of these teams could be playoff teams. The Dodgers and the White Sox for sure. The A's and the Cardinals can get hot and get into a wild card position. Might be a one-gamer. Maybe they pull a Nationals and run the table. So the question is, who has the best shot at winning it all between the four teams involved in the earliest games today? Dodgers, Cardinals, White Sox, A's. Now, right off the bat, you're probably just looking at it and saying, well, obviously you're going with something like the Dodgers or the White Sox. The Dodgers are, depending on the day, in the wild card spot, but a giant lead, or they're tied or ahead of the Giants in the NL West. So the Dodgers are either going to be winning the NL West, or they'll get into a wild card team. The White Sox, they've run away with the Central Division. They have like a double-digit lead. So you're probably going with the Dodgers or the White Sox, but maybe you just feel something about the A's or the Cardinals that maybe the Nationals had a few years back when they did it all in such a great come-from-behind and underdog fashion after what they went through during the season. So hit me up. We'll tell you how you get in touch with us in just a second. Tell me what you think. Who has the best chance of winning it all? Dodgers, Cardinals, White Sox, A's. Four teams involved in the early game today. Big thanks to our title sponsor, Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports, the most realistic and the highest stakes fantasy platform out there, but it's more than that. It's fantasy sports on the blockchain. We are building an ecosystem. It is going to be unbelievable. Already hockey has crowned 2 champions. Football kicks off tonight. The UFAFL cannot wait to see those teams in action. How about this? 53-man rosters. O-linemen get points. And baseball is going to be just as realistic. We'll have 26-man rosters. We'll have a 40-man list. Eventually, we'll have minor league systems. We'll have a Legends League. It is going to be the next best thing to owning an actual Major League Baseball team. Check out www.uffsports.com or hit me up at Duck Millard on Twitter, at the UFLB as well. If you're interested, franchise auctions will go November 5th to 7th, and we'll be giving you all the details as we move along in the program. But getting really excited about the franchise auctions, and we will have a really big announcement when it comes to baseball very, very soon. So this is what we're going with on the show. We're going to get to some of the top headlines in fantasy baseball news this week, and looking ahead to next week at a debate, I should say. Some Yankee fans wondering why Don Mattingly isn't in the Hall of Fame. So we're doing Baseball Thunderdome with a guy who's in and a guy who some people thinks they should be in. I'll tell you where I stand. I'm from north of the 49th. I'm going with Larry Walker, but we'll get to that a little bit later. Usually I don't give it away, but I want to pump this up a little bit. Waiver wire wins. We'll tell you a guy also from the New York area you should be picking up, not a Yankee, that might be able to help you in the playoffs or down the stretch. For some reason, my one league doesn't end until the regular season, which in regular fantasy is not a great thing unless you're continuing on to the playoffs. Playoffs, yeah, if you're continuing on to the playoffs like the UFLB, it's a great thing, but if your season ends in it, you could be going into the championship game with a guy resting. So we'll tell you a little bit about that. Prospect Peak is a look into the future, a guy that you might be able to want to stash or try to pick up in the offseason. And Rule Your League is where we will simply tell you how to make your league better or some sort of fantasy rule to live by. But here is how you can get in touch with me.
You talking to me? You talking to me? You talking to me? Then who the hell else are you talking? You talking to me? Well, I'm the only one here.
All right, on Twitter, at Duck Millard. And if you want more information, reach out at the UFLB. And I can get you, our DMs at the UFLB are open, so you can reach out, ask any questions. If you want some information about this show, Full Count Fantasy Baseball at gmail.com. And if you want some information about UFSN and getting on the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network, UFSN at uffsports.com. And a couple of websites, fullcountfantasybaseball.ca and uffsports.com. That is where all the magic happens, and that is certainly where you want to go and check out the info. All right, let's get to the headlines now, and we're starting off with the Wanda year streak, not a strike, thankfully. Maybe striking out early, but certainly much better now. Wanda Franco, the Rays' superstar prospect, now a regular player, shortstop, might have started like a tortoise, but he's off like a hare now. He's reached base in his last 38 games. 38 games! That's impressive. That's 2 more than Mickey Mantle. That's how impressive. And Mickey Mantle now sits 3rd when it comes to on-base streak for players 20 or younger. Frank Robinson owns the record at 43 for now. Now, Franco was hitting just 221 before the streak started in early July. I believe July 5th is when it started. He's hit .313, 3 home runs, and 19 RBIs in August. He wrapped up that month really strong. 7 long balls, 36 RBI on the season. So more than half of his RBIs came in a red-hot August, and he's only played in 61 games. So I know people were a little bit concerned possibly when Wanda Franco started slow, but come on, you got to give these guys a little, especially with the amount of pressure on some of these guys. So he's looking like a star now, and you have to be loving it, especially if you were able to call him up late in the season when the Rays called him up. Then he's helping you definitely in the playoffs. If not, you're just loving it for next year when you insert him into your starting lineup. All right, the Yankees are plummeting, just as the Jays are soaring, and now there's a Garrett Cole injury scare. The Yankee ace and possibly your fantasy ace left Tuesday's game versus the Jays in the 4th inning with a tight hamstring. Aaron Boone said he was feeling better as of Wednesday afternoon, and at that point he wasn't going for an MRI. I know Garrett Cole obviously was concerned and probably scared after his start and not sure about he's going to make his next start, but if he needs an MRI, then obviously you're really concerned, because going into Tuesday, he was 4-0 with a .73 earned run average in his previous 4 starts. You just really hope he can make his next start, which I believe is scheduled for Monday And then that gives you a 2-start week from an ace, which could be going into, whether it's your semifinal, your league final. For me, it's just the final regular season game. So I'm glad I'm not wasting a 2-start week on Garrett Cole on something I've already clinched a playoff spot. So hopefully Garrett Cole, for your fantasy sake, can get back on track. I know Jays fans are absolutely loving what's going on right now. Robbie Ray is unbelievable. Marcus Semien these are two guys that the Jays are going to have to try and throw some money at next year, because they do have a really good core. Barrios, the pitching staff, Jays are looking really good. And of course, we didn't even talk about the infield studs that they have. But that's a no-brainer. It'll be interesting to see if Toronto can really make a push for and grab a playoff spot right outside the wild card spot as we speak. All right, getting to our next story when it comes to headlines. Max Fried on fire. On fire like Mariah, as my old weatherman Andy Schultz used to say. 8 straight quality starts for the Braves hurler. The 27-year-old lefty has been tagged for just 10 earned runs in those 8 starts. Overall, he has struck out 136 batters and 136 and a third inning, 51 Ks over the 8 quality start streak, and twice during that time, he has struck out 9 batters. And by the way, great ace card by @JacksonAward2 on Twitter. Braves are another team that I have a lot of respect for the pieces that they've been able to put together and be able to, take the AL East, providing they can hold off the Philadelphia Phillies. But Max Fried, one of the main reasons that they are where they are. The Braves are who we said they are, I believe was the paraphrasing. 2-start pitchers next week if your league wraps up, or even if you're just into the playoffs, a couple of guys to target in the waiver wire, depending on how big your league is. Tarik Skubal of the Brewers makes his first start against the Tigers, second start versus Tampa Bay. Obviously, these things could change based on schedules and guys getting moved up. But in his last 5, he has 37 Ks in 30 innings. In 3 of the starts, he's had an ERA under 2.70. So that's pretty good. And 0 in 2 of the other games. So he's been looking good. If you're looking for a guy who's going to make a couple of starts, there's one of them. And Drew Rasmussen, I just picked this guy up from the Rays. First start versus the Jays, second start versus the Tigers. In his last 12 starts, he has given up just 8 earned runs, and in 4 of them, he hasn't given up an earned run. July 5th was the last time he gave up more than 1 earned run. So if you're looking ahead to 2 starters next week, there is a couple of guys that you will be able to probably get in your leagues. They were both available in both of my leagues. The one league I'm in the toilet bowl. So that's the battle for the first overall pick. And the other league, like I said, we're going to next week. So a couple of guys, Skubal and Rasmussen, to grab on the waiver wire. That'll make a couple of starts next week. And finally, really excited to introduce to you Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball Director of Competition, Matt Soren. Matt has been working with myself and Brian Hernandez, who we introduced last week. He's been working with us almost since the beginning, almost as long as I've been doing it, and almost as long as Brian came on board as well. So we're going to introduce you to Matt. You can go to www.uffsports.com, click on the news section, and then boom, you will get access to the article that will introduce you to Matt Soren, who is a former Philadelphia Phillies draft pick. Played minor league baseball and was on the Team Israel Olympic roster this year. Unfortunately, an injury kept him from playing in the Olympic Games. But you can find all about how Matt is going to be helping the Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball. He's also going to be a big part of Legends League Baseball with Gerald Smiley, another guy who has joined us. So we'll be introducing you to everybody as we go. But right now, you can find out about Matt Soren, Director of Competition for Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball. Him and I went through the rule book, the scoring system, very, very diligently, and he was a huge part. And he's also a huge part in a big announcement we are going to be having, hopefully in the next week. We'll be able to bring that announcement. But feel free to check it out on www.uffsports.com and head to the news section and check out a little bit more, find out more about Director of Competition, Matt Soren. All right, how do you spell relief? Talking about the bullpens now, and these are closers with a strong hold on the job. Liam Hendricks at the top of the White Sox, we mentioned them earlier, crushing the NL Central. In the last month, 30-day job, he has 7 saves, 17 Ks in 12 innings. Very impressive. Kenley Jansen, after wavering, I thought, a little bit this year, and at times last year as well, seems to have righted the ship. 7 saves, double that in strikeouts in just 13 1/3 in the last 30 days. Josh Hader, a perennial closer of the year candidate. For the Brew Crew, he has 7 saves and 17 Ks in just 9 innings in the last 30 days. Raisel Iglesias of the Angels is a relatively newcomer to some of these lists, but he has been excellent. 6 saves, and just as many Ks as Josh Hader. A little bit more innings pitched in the last 30 days. Ryan Presley of the Astros, Edwin Diaz of the Mets, and Jordan Romano of the Blue Jays, all coming in with 5 saves each and a various amount of Ks. Romano has 19 Ks in the last 13 1/3 innings pitched. The one guy who's not on this list because I think there's definitely concern, and that's Aroldis Chapman. And Aroldis Chapman right now is, like the Yankees, struggling a lot. 2 saves for Aroldis Chapman in the last month, just 11 Ks in just 6 innings in the last 30 days. So the Yankees need to get they're obviously, like a lot of teams, banged up, but they're certainly not where a lot of people thought the Yankees would be. And, Aroldis Chapman not getting a lot of opportunities right now to get in there. So, whether you think Aroldis Chapman, and even Boone said it the other day that, Aroldis Chapman has to start improving. I can't remember exactly what it was, but there was definitely some concern. But the Yankees have to give him the opportunities as well. So it is a bit of a goes both ways situation, chicken and the egg when it comes to your closer and a struggling team. We're going to get to Baseball Thunderdome waiver wire wins in a second after we tell you a little bit about UFF sports.
This is Full Count Fantasy Baseball.
You lollygag the ball around the infield.
Presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports.
You lollygag your way down to first.
Get in the game where you own the game.
You lollygag in and out of the dugout. Do you know what that makes you, Larry?
Lollygag.
Lollygaggers.
Full Count Fantasy Baseball is part of the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network, your one-stop fantasy sports shop. We're creating something all fantasy fans can love, and we are looking for quality programming to join some of the great shows that we have already. UFAFL Nation comes your way on Tuesdays with Mike Skrzniak. UFHL Now comes your way on Fridays with myself and insider Larry Fisher. We have the official UFFS podcast every Sunday and more. So we would love for you to be part of it. Reach out if you're interested. On Twitter, it's at UFS Network, or you can email UFSN@UFFsports.com. And you can join us, have some fun, and talk some fantasy. All right, one of the favorite segments that I absolutely love is Baseball Thunderdome, as we get into it right now.
Welcome to another edition of Thunderdome!
You be cocky and arrogant, even when you're getting beat.
2 men enter, 1 man leaves.
Prediction? Yes, prediction.
And right now, I've got 2 men.
It's serious.
All right, we are definitely serious when it comes to Baseball Thunderdome. So we take 2 players and we put them up against each other, just like in actual Thunderdome. And we try to find out just what or which player you would take in a particular situation. So in this case, we are doing, and this came up yesterday because of a conversation we were having about the Hall of Fame class of 2020 that went in yesterday. Obviously, you have Derek Jeter, and I love I didn't even know this story, that Derek Jeter kept using the old PA announcer, and I apologize, the name escapes me, for years after he had passed away. A very iconic voice. If you've ever heard Derek Jeter come up to bat, you know what I'm talking about. So there was some great players, Ted Simmons going in the builders category, or as the players category as well, and Marvin Miller, of course, in the builders category. So the one guy that we as Canadians got really excited about was Larry Walker. You know, former MVP, 3-time batting champ, led the league in home runs in 97 when he won his MVP. A gun, could steal bases as well. 5-tool player. I don't think there's, I know it took him a long time to get in, and some people might think it's borderline. And you know what? You can say, hey, the field in Colorado and the air helped him. Well, that's just science, man. You can't blame him for science. No different than you can blame a left-handed hitter at Yankee Stadium for taking advantage of the short field. Like, it's just how the fields are built and where the player. It's not like Larry Walker said, I'm only playing in Colorado. So this is what we're going with, Baseball Thunderdome today. Don Mattingly, Sideburns from The Simpsons, or Canadian Moose Lips, Larry Walker. That's his Twitter handle, by the way. And we're only using their MVP seasons. So which guy are you taking in fantasy baseball? Let's say you're in the Legends League and you have a choice. I'm giving you a choice right now between the Legends League. 1997 Larry Walker, where he hit 49 home runs, drove in 130, stole 33 bases. 49 home runs, 33 stolen bases. An average of 366. An on-base percentage of 452, an OPS of 1.172, and obviously the MVP, Gold Glove, Silver Slugger, was an all-star. That's pretty good numbers. Those are pretty good numbers for Larry Walker. Now let's look at Sideburns Mattingly, who also had a great season in '85 when he was named the MVP. 35 home runs, 48 doubles, led the league in doubles. 35 home runs, 145 RBIs, and also led the league in that. Don wasn't the fastest guy. He wasn't stealing bases. He did walk. Hit 324, on-base percentage of 371, OPS of 939. All-Star, Gold Glove, a Silver Slugger. So I think, and obviously I'm a guy that's from north of the 49th. I'm a little bit biased. I got to go with Larry Walker. Just a little bit more dynamic. He had 46 doubles in his season as well. So 46 to 48, even on a lot of counts. I'm going with Larry Walker, and I'm Canadian, so I'm not going to fault a Yankee fan for going with Don Mattingly. But who would you take out of those two MVP seasons? If that was the criteria for the Legends League, which guy are you taking? Sideburns or Moose Lips? I'd like to know. I love yesterday Larry Walker telling the story about how he cut across the base pass because he didn't even know the rules. This is what makes Larry Walker's story even better. This is a guy that at 16 years old or 17 years old, I can't remember, was trying out for a Canadian junior hockey team, the Regina Pats, as a goalie. Corey Koski, also former goalie, Canadian baseball player. But anyway, Larry Walker gets cut from this hockey team as a goalie, comes home, throws his equipment into the corner, and decides to pick up baseball at 16 or 17. He told the story yesterday. He might have played 15 to 20 games growing up. How many guys end up in the Hall of Fame that really didn't start picking up their sport until they were almost an adult? That does not happen very often. So anyway, hit me up at Duck Millard on Twitter. Let me know who you like in Baseball Thunderdome. Mattingly or Walker, using 1985 for Mattingly, 1997 for Larry Walker as the criteria of who you would take. All right, talk about Mattingly. Let's keep it in the Big Apple. Waiver wire wins now. I'm going with Jonathan Yar, a second baseman, third baseman, and shortstop with the Mets. Versatility is huge in fantasy baseball. Hit .311, an .876 OPS since the All-Star break. In his last 12 games, he's hit 4 doubles, 2 home runs, a triple, and has driven in 7. It's a bonus that he also plays so many spots. And while his stolen bases have been down quite a bit this year, he is worth grabbing to replace 3 different spots if you need it. Or the DH, your utility. So you actually get 4 spots out of this guy, and hopefully he finishes strong. He was the 3rd most added player this week on CBS. The most added, Frank Schwendell, second baseman and right fielder with the White Sox, and David Bednar, a relief pitcher with the Pirates. The most dropped, Louis Trevino, relief pitcher with the A's, and A.J. Pollock, left fielder and center field, qualifying for the Dodgers, who's on the IL. He's out 2 to 3 weeks with a hamstring injury, so it's not surprising that A.J. Pollock has been dropped. Prospect Peak is coming your way, as well as Rule Your League. We'll look ahead to the future and how your league can simply just get a little bit better.
This is Full Count Fantasy Baseball.
All right, you guys, let's listen up. We won a game yesterday. We win one today, that's 2 in a row.
Presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports.
We win one tomorrow, that's called a winning streak. It has happened before.
Get in the game, where you own the game.
So let's see some hustle, let's jack it up a little. I got a feeling things are about to turn around for us.
Love Lou Brown of Major League. Full Count Fantasy Baseball presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports, the most realistic fantasy platform ever. It's fantasy sports on the blockchain, and it is the future of fantasy sports. The Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball will auction off all 30 teams with a franchise player attached to them November 5th to 7th. You can get more information on Twitter at the UFLB. Hit me up on there. Hit us up. We will get you the information you need. You can also email me, Dean_UFLB at UFFsports.com. But we're going to have only 30 teams, just like Major League Baseball. We are going to have 26-man rosters, 40-man lists, specific positions. This is professional fantasy sports. It is professional fantasy sports. And you need to get in the game where you own the game. Athlete NFTs will be coming on board. We just had a meeting last night talking about the international free agents that will be auctioning off. It's going to be wild. And the scouting platform as well. You can scout real-world players and then auction them off to franchise owners. So get in the game where you own the game. www.uffsports.com is where you can find all of the information that you need. Let's dive into our prospect peak now, going with Robert Hassell, an outfielder from the Padres. The Padres starting to take a book out of the Dodgers and saying, hey, why don't we just develop all these great guys and then either trade some of them, keep some of them? Like the Dodgers are famous for trading their mid-level prospects or their reliever. They trade some of their mid-level prospects for relievers. Then later, those relievers get a little bit more expensive, and they trade those relievers for other teams' best prospects. The Padres are developing some of their own and then using some of them to deal them off. But Robert Hassell, first-round pick in 2020, 8th overall, hits left, throws left, playing in high A with Fort Wayne, 6 for 32, 3 home runs, 7 RBIs, and an .895 OPS. But how about this debut? After getting promoted to high A with Fort Wayne, a 3-home run game in his debut, his first with Fort Wayne. This is a guy who wasn't being projected as having huge power, but that gets developed as guys go, sometimes last for some guys. And so what he has is a terrific eye at the plate. If he keeps the power game going, watch out. Before he was promoted in 92 games at low A, He hit 323, 415, 482. Those are his slash numbers with 7 home runs, 30 stolen bases. 323, 415 OPS, or on-base percentage, 482 slugging. So you're getting an OPS of almost 900. It's pretty awesome for Robert Hassell, an outfielder for the Friars, the San Diego Padres. All right, in Rule Your League, let's get to that now.
Smokey, this is not Nam. This is bowling. There are rules. I don't think it taints it.
What you talking about, mister?
You're crazy.
Yeah, it definitely taints it.
I like you, but you're crazy.
It definitely taints it, Jim Crane. The rule for your fantasy, or maybe it's more of a guideline. Actually, should be a hard and fast rule. There's some hard and fast rules in fantasy, and then there's some things you can kind of, guideline. This is a hard and fast rule. Before you make waiver claims, especially late in the season, do the research on schedules. Especially you're going to the playoffs, you're picking up a guy, you need that guy to make 2 starts. Things can change, obviously, but who are they coming up against? Next week, do you want a guy facing the White Sox and maybe the Astros? Maybe not. Do you want somebody facing the Dodgers and the Giants? If you had a Mets starter a couple of weeks ago, when they came out west, you would have wanted to avoid picking up Mets pitchers because they got crushed by the Giants and the Dodgers. So researching waiver claims or researching the schedule before you make waiver claims could be the difference between your pickup getting shellacked or your pickup being one of the best moves you've ever made and helping you win a championship. Not necessarily obviously you want to, if you're trying to take advantage of a 2-start guy, but who are they facing? Okay, this team in the next week, these are the 2 teams that they're facing. I don't want any part of those guys. I'm not picking this guy up. Or they're facing Baltimore and Pittsburgh. Boom, sign me up for that, whatever it might be. Arizona, okay, yeah, I can do that. Things like that. Always be researching the schedules before you make any waiver claims. That should be kind of self-explanatory, but you would be surprised the amount of people that pick a guy up and then say, oh man, this guy is playing the Yankees when they're red hot, and I do not want that. So that is definitely my advice, is to make sure you're checking out the schedules, especially when it comes to pitchers, before you make those waiver claims. All right, want to tell you about UFFsports.com. It is the future of fantasy, and the future is now. Check it out. It's fantasy sports on the blockchain. You can join as a fan. You can sign up as a scout real-world players to then sell to franchises later on. You could try to join a staff. You can even try to bribe one of the existing franchises that are there. Right now we have 32 hockey teams. We have 32 football teams. That starts tonight. Good luck to everybody in the UFAFL. Andy, Jamie, and Max, I know you guys are going to do an absolutely awesome job. And if you want to find out some more great fantasy programs or find out more about the UFFS and how our NFTs, our digital athlete NFTs work, check out our YouTube channel, just YouTube and UFSN, Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network. Just search that on YouTube and you will find it. It is your one-stop fantasy shop. Follow at UFS Network to find out more. And if you have a show, hit us up. We would love to have you on board. This show, of course, is presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports. As we've been telling you, it is the most realistic fantasy platform out there, connected to the blockchain. It is unbelievable. One last thing, a piece of advice from Crash Davis.
You be cocky and arrogant, even when you're getting beat.
And that is it for me on this episode. Few more shows and we'll be morphing into Inside UFLB and telling you all about the Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball and how you can get in the game where you own the game. Enjoy baseball. As for what I'll be watching this weekend, the Yankees and the Mets. 20-year anniversary of 9/11. I don't think there will be many dry eyes in the stadium. So that's on Saturday night. Certainly what I'll be tuning into. MLB TV has some terrific programming going on with memories and players that were in some of those first games. So that's certainly what I'll be watching. Yankees and Mets this Saturday night. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. One last thing to say, and that is ban the shift.